Good morning. Good to see y'all. Good to see y'all this morning. Before we get into our study this morning, if you will, pray with me, please. Heavenly Father, Lord, we are grateful for another day, Lord, and all just the many things that you bless us with, Lord, and grateful, Lord, for the rain that you've given us. We just ask you, Lord, as we enter into this study today, that we'll listen to the things that are mentioned and that we talk about, and we ask, Lord, that we'll take this maybe as a beginner for a deeper study, and we'll look and see how we can apply it practically to our lives, Lord. Thank you for the ability and the opportunity we have to come together to study your word, and we just ask, Lord, that through the week that we'll find other times where we can carve out time to be with you, to study your word, and see who you would have us to be. Thank you for your Son and what we have in, through, and by him. In his name, amen. All right, so last week there was a question raised about, when we were going through the Nazirite vow, there was a question about why hair, right? Why hair? Why was that something that was used? And so, looking at it, the best explanation that I could find reads like this. The vow required the individual to let their hair grow long and not cut it during the period of consecration. At the end of the vow, the hair was cut and offered as a sacrifice. The hair symbolized the individual's dedication and separation to God. It was a visible sign of their commitment and holiness. The act of not cutting the hair was a way to set oneself apart from the ordinary and to show devotion to God. And so hair was a very visible way to do that. You know, when I remember in our society today, you know, what do we want to do a lot of the times? You know, when we're young, our parents tell us once our hair gets out of control to do what? You're going to cut it. You're going to cut it, right? And so with it, that's the best explanation that I could find, and I did not forget. I did not forget. Oh, I didn't. I will get you one. I will get you one. I will get you one, and I will even bring it to you tomorrow. All right. All right. I'm sorry? There you go. We can talk college football because we about to be there, right? All right. All right. So last week we were trying to get through lesson 3, and I think we got almost down to the end of it. I don't think we finished. To the very last section, and that was the signals of God. That's in Numbers chapter 9. Turn over there. And starting in verse 15. Now on the day that the tabernacle was raised up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the testimony. From evening until morning it was above the tabernacle like the appearance of fire. So it was, the cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, after that the children of Israel would journey. And in the place where the cloud settled, there the children of Israel would pitch their tents at the command of the Lord. The children of Israel would journey, and at the command of the Lord they would camp. As long as the cloud stayed above the tabernacle, they remained encamped. Even when the cloud continued long, many days above the tabernacle, the children of Israel kept the charge of the Lord and did not journey. So it was when the cloud was above the tabernacle a few days, according to the command of the Lord, they would remain encamped, and according to the command of the Lord, they would journey. So it was when the cloud remained only from evening until morning. When the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they would journey, whether by day or by night. Whenever the cloud was taken up, they would journey. Whether it was 2 days, a month, or a year that the cloud remained above the tabernacle, the children of Israel would remain encamped and not journey. But when it was taken up, they would journey. At the command of the Lord, they remained encamped, and at the command of the Lord, they journeyed and kept the charge of the Lord at the command of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And so with it, there were signals here given, right? God is leading them. This is when you go, this is when you stop, right? And from what we read here, were they faithful to that? Of course, they were faithful to that, okay? God knows what, they fully believe God knows what He's doing, right? Now, are they always going to have that attitude? No. They're not always going to have that attitude, but right now, these were the signals. These were the signals that were given. This is, whether it's by day, by night, when I tell you to go, you go. Now, why is God doing it in such a manner? Well, because God knew the best time for them to go and when they needed to stay. You got to remember, God's working all of this out for them, correct? And there's a lot of things going on that we're not privy to, right? That maybe He's working out while they're encamped somewhere so they can move forward, right? Maybe He's, through His own means, He's moving people out of the way or circumstances out of the way so they can continue to move to where they need to move. And so they're faithful to Him. They're listening to Him. Now, we haven't got to the point to where people become people and we start complaining about everything, right? Okay. And so we go to chapter 10 here, and we have the introduction of trumpets. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Make 2 silver trumpets for yourself. You shall make them of hammered work. You shall use them for the calling of the congregation and for the directing the movement of the camps. When they blow both of them, all the congregation shall gather before you at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. But if they blow only once, then the leaders and the heads of the divisions of Israel shall gather to you. When you sound the advance, the camp shall lie on the east side, shall then begin their journey. When you sound the advance the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall begin their journey. They shall sound the call for them to begin their journeys, and when the assembly is to be gathered together, you shall blow, but not sound the advance. The sons of Aaron, the priests, shall blow the trumpets, and these shall be to you as an ordinance forever throughout your generations. When you go to war in your land against the enemy who oppresses you, then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, and you will be remembered before the Lord your God, and you will be saved from your enemies. Also on the day of your gladness in your appointed feast, and at the beginning of your months, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, and they shall be a memorial for you before your God. I am the Lord your God. And so here we have the introduction of these trumpets, these silver trumpets, if you will. Now, what's interesting about this, has God dealt with every detail? What is he saying here with the use of these trumpets? Is He putting together really an easy way of communication to this whole congregation of people? Because you got to remember, today we can send an email, right? And as long as people check their emails, right, you can have instant communication with anybody around the world, right? We got cell phones. I can get on WhatsApp or Messenger or any of these kind of devices, and I can call anybody I want, right, and get in touch with them. But how in the world do you wrangle this amount of people without any of that technology? Exactly right. Exactly right. Even the best of grandmothers cannot holler that loud, right? I say that from experience because I've been yelled at a lot in my life. Probably because of my own causes. So we have trumpets here that are loud enough that when they heard it, and they're really being trained here, when you hear it once, that's what this means. When you hear it twice, that's what this means. And so you have a clear communication here where there's no ambiguity, there's no confusion. This is the way it is to be done. What's interesting to me is when you look at the use of trumpets, y'all, what as Christians today, when we think of trumpets, what do we think about? I'm sorry? Gabriel? What do you mean by that? That's what I was wanting you to reference, okay? When we think of trumpets today, we think about the trumpets that's going to sound, right? When what? When Christ comes back, right? Now, is that going to be a trumpet that everybody's going to hear? So some people, it's interesting. You read different commentaries and people's thoughts on that, and they're like, well, are you sure everybody's going to be able to hear that? Are you sure that everybody, wherever they're at, what if they're on, such and such standard time? You know what I mean? What if they're on the other side of the world? What I'm told in Scripture is this is going to be a trumpet sound that whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, if you're awake, if you're asleep, if you're swimming, if you're on Mount Everest, you're going to hear it. And it's going to be so distinguishable that you're going to know what it is. it's going to be something you've never heard before. Is that fair? What's that? Of course not. That's a good question. If you're in, that's a really good remark there for those out there in live stream land. Ken said the only question that we have is, what was that again? Is anything too hard for God? And that's amazing how sometimes we like to place limitations on God, don't we? You know, how in the world can this happen? You know, how this? Well, you got to remember, here's the God that spoke everything into existence. So what can He not do, right? What can He not do? So we have the silver trumpets that are introduced here. There's a correlation between the use of trumpets into the New Testament and what will bring in and will signal the return of Christ. I thought that was interesting. All right, so let's move into lesson 4. Let's move into lesson 4. Y'all, there's a lot going on in lesson 4. If you went ahead and read and looked at it, there's a lot that's going on in lesson 4. So when we get in, we continue into chapter 10 here, and in verses 14 through 28, as the children began their march, and that's what this deals with, the order of the march here. As the children began their march, the order given in chapter 2 is observed. The only difference in the two chapters is that the Gershonites and the Merarites entered the ranks immediately behind the first camp, which was Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, instead after the second camp in the middle of the ranks. There the Kohathites marched with the furniture of the tabernacle. The reason for this change may have been to enable these to begin setting up the tabernacle while the rest of the tribes were marching into camp. Now, so you think about that for a second. We talked about, in the last couple of weeks, we talked about the difference in the roles of these three groups, right? What they were all responsible for. And I believe, I think it was last week, maybe we talked about how many carts and oxen were devoted to or given to each group and whatnot. The Gershonites and the Merarites, they were more responsible for the heavier items, correct? More the structure of the tabernacle there, right? They had the heaviest and probably, as far as, excuse me, I ain't going to say hardest because the other group had to literally carry it on their shoulders. But what they were carrying was also lighter too, right? So there is a conversation there about who had the toughest job. Well, they're dealing with all the bulk and heavy weight. They probably have more physical labor. This other group's carrying lighter things, but yet if I touch it, what happens? Yeah. So there's a discussion. So it seems to be that the change here that happens because the Gershonites and the Merarites, they can get ahead of everybody else. They can get ahead of the Kohathites, and they can go ahead and get this set up so when they get to where we're stopping at, they can go ahead and bring it in and set it down. Now, why would you want that? Why would you want it necessarily to be that way? Why would you want this to go ahead? Of course there's ease. Of course there's a lot of ease to this where they can just walk right in and set it down. But maybe what is another layer to this? And why would you want them to be able to, when we do get to a stopping point, everything's set up and all they got to do is literally take it in and set it down? If I do that, what's less likely to happen? Well, it's definitely more order, okay? Is this all? There you go, okay? If they, literally when they come to camp, when we get to our stopping point, if they just walk it in and set it down, you have a less likelihood that somebody's going to make a really bad decision, right? As far as, oh man, look at that. I ain't never seen, that before, And I'm going to go over and do what? Go touch it. I'm going to go touch it. I'm sorry? They were told specifically how to march. Tony, what? I'm sorry. No, not for this. Yes, the order was changed. There was an original order given, and then this was changed to facilitate, to facilitate this. Yes, to facilitate this, to allow this to be able to take place. No, God did not make a mistake. No. Of course. So this now in the future, will they take liberties? Absolutely they will. And they'll be punished for it. This right here was done for simplicity, and also as we move from place to place, as we begin to take this journey, this is going to be done in order to make it easier along that way. Yeah. Yes, and as you're moving this large of a group of people, right? As you're moving this large of a group of people, y'all, there's a lot of possible things that could go wrong if there is chaos. And so that's why here comes this first group, and then they move along the way. And then here comes the second group, and so on and so forth. And so order is maintained throughout the whole process. Yes? Yes, because we're at Sinai, we're waiting, and now we're moving. So after that, before they leave, in chapter 10 of verses 29 through 32, it says, "Now Moses said to Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, we are setting out for a place of which the Lord said, I will give it to you, come with us, and we will treat you well. For the Lord has promised good things to Israel. And he said to them, I will not go, but I will depart to my own land and to my relatives. And so Moses said, Please do not leave, inasmuch as you know we are to camp in the wilderness, and you can be our eyes. And it shall be, if you go with us, indeed it shall be that whatever good that the Lord will do to us, the same he will do to you." So we have here Moses trying to persuade Hobab to come with him. Now, why do you think, why is there such a need for this guy? Obviously, Moses is saying, hey, please, he says, well, I'm fixing to go over here. No, I need you to come with us, right? Is it because you think maybe that he has such a close relationship with him? He doesn't want to say bye. Maybe he's fearful of his security, his life. What is it? Why do you think he was needed? Right. Well, when I was looking at this, the first thing I thought about is, why would you need him, right? Why does Moses specifically want him to come? And I first thought about, well, maybe it's the relationship, right? Maybe it's just there's a close relationship, and so he wants him to come because of that. Because when I read Scripture, what we just read a few moments ago, the cloud's leading them, right? The cloud's what's leading them, when they leave, or fire. And so when we look at this on page 132 of my commentary here, let me find it. Where's it at? Well, it's 138. I'm sorry, I can't even understand my own writing. Page 138. So when I thought about that, my commentary here says, if the Israelites were guided by the cloud, why was Hobab needed to serve as their guide in the wilderness? One possible answer is that the cloud provided general guidance, moving in the direction the Israelites were to march, but God left the choice of a specific route to the people involved. And so maybe perhaps, looking at it from that standpoint, the cloud directed them in the general direction they were supposed to go. But within that general direction, they were supposed to choose the specific route. And maybe Hobab here, possibly as a guide, would have known the area very well and would have served to say, hey, there's a river right over there. Maybe we want to go over here. You know, this is the route we're going, but let's go that way instead of that way. And that's why Moses wanted him to be on this trip. He knew the land very well, and he would be able to help with the guidance of the specific route within the direction the cloud would lead them. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you, Steve. Well, I would say in general, as that information was going to be relayed either way, because as you start sending people out in these groups and whatnot, as the front group, starts seeing certain things, what are they going to do? Well, there's a river up here. We need to, do what? We need to send word back. They sent scouts, right? Right. From what my commentaries kind of speak about is that he already had a general knowledge of this area. And so he would have already have known, what's the best route to take. And maybe that's why he was so important. Maybe that's why Moses makes this plea, this earnest plea to get him on the journey. Could be also they were cousins and they were family as well. Yes. They're cousins, and it could be that it was the relationship, right? Could be it was the relationship, or it could be both. Could be both. Because if I'm Moses, I know that if he doesn't go, what's the likelihood I'm going to see him again? Probably not. Exactly right. That's right. That's right. All right, so we move on to where the march begins. In verses 33 through 36, so they departed from the mountain of the Lord on a journey of 3 days, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them for the 3 days' journey to search out a resting place for them, and the cloud of the Lord was above them by day when they went out from the camp. So it was whenever the ark set out that Moses said, "Rise up, O Lord, let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you." And when it rested, he said, "Return, O Lord, to the many thousands of Israel." And so really in this, on my commentary, it says, describing this moment, first the cloud moved, indicating it was time for Israel to get ready to go. Adding an audio signal to a visual one, the trumpet sounded at Moses' command. At these signals, the people began to break camp. After an interval, when the people were prepared to march, the ark was taken up. As Moses recited the required ritual prayer, the priests carried the ark toward the cloud so that it would lead the procession. With successive trumpet blasts, the tribes fell into formation. When the whole column gradually began its march, following the ark, which followed the cloud, as the journey progressed, Hobab or another man or other men sought the easiest route, searched for water, and watched for potential enemies. And so here we have the march begins. Now we're going to get to the point to where we have an issue. So let's go over to chapter 11. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about this a little bit. We'll see if you remember. So we're marching, we're on our way, and we get 50 miles, right? 100 miles before we have our first issue, right? Oh, it didn't take long at all, y'all. It didn't take long at all. Now, when the people, chapter 11, now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. For the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some in the outskirts of the camp. And then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord had burned among them. So we get to the point where just at the very beginning of this, what are they doing? They're complaining. It was bad. We're 3 days in, and here we go. Now, why is God upset about this? Why did this displease Him? Steve said, because it's been 3 days. It's like we just, we've done all this to get ready for this journey, right? It's kind of like, we told Luca, we reserved there's a place in Fernandina we like to go. We like to go each year for a beach vacation. And we told him, all right, we reserved it for next year. And he's like, all right. So when do we go? When do we get to go? When do we get to go? When do we get to go? And that's what you hear every couple of days. When are we going to the beach, Dad? Son, I told you it's a year from now. Okay, all right. 3 days, y'all. 3 days. It took them 3 days to really really put their trust of God to the side. They're doing so good. They're listening to everything. They're following Him, right? The cloud says, everything that's going on they have done, and now we get on to this journey. We're headed to the promised land, the land that's been, set aside for them, right? Would you be excited about that? Of course. We're on the way, right? We're on the way. This should have been the point where my faith is locked in, right? This is where we're headed to it. We're tangibly moving towards this. 3 days in, and now we're mad. Well, what are we complaining about? What is it that we're upset about? Man, they start thinking about, y'all, what place do they start thinking about? If you continue to read further down, you understand that they start reminiscing about what place? Egypt. Right. Well, man, you remember when we were back in Egypt and we had all this stuff? We had melons and cucumbers, and I'm paraphrasing here, so I apologize if one of these is not. Onions and garlic and all of this, and meat and all of this kind of stuff. What are they leaving out? They were slaves. They were beaten if they didn't do their job the way it was specified. So for all that good food they got, they forget the other side of the balance of that equation, correct? They forgot about the fact that they were begging God to get them out of this, right? That those cries had got to God, and He sent Moses. And so if you're God, some people that really probably are not familiar with the Bible and God, they say, man, He's brutal. Look what He did. Look what He did in this situation, that situation. Put yourself in His shoes. You have done everything for these people. You have set everything up for them. Literally, all they got to do is stay faithful, hold up their side of it, and it's going to be great. Man, it's like asking somebody to make you some brownies, but then you're going to argue about how they make the brownies. You know what I mean? But what is human nature? What is human nature? I want it my way. I want it my way. And so we see here that the Lord set a fire among them and consumed some that were in the outermost parts of the camp. And some commentaries say perhaps this is where the complaining originated. Maybe it was on the outskirts of it where the complaining really was going on. And so He was dealing with it right where it happened. Moses petitioned the Lord in behalf of the people, and the fire was stayed. The place was named Taberah, which means burning. And so what message is God sending these people? you better be careful. You know what I mean? Because God is a loving God, but God's got His limits too, correct? I mean, He's not gonna. Whenever I complain, y'all, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, whenever we complain, we're telling God you're just not doing it right. And so these people are literally, by way of their complaining about what they don't have, and we look at what they do have, God is taking care of every need, right? Okay? He's taking care of, they've got food. They just don't like the food that God's given them. God's done everything, and for them to say, well, this isn't good enough for me. Really? Well, okay, this isn't good enough for you, so here you go. Well, there's going to be something else that's really going to lock that in. We'll get to it. We'll get to it in a moment. But there's going to be something that locks that 40 years of wandering in. I mean, we want to talk about the issues they had, but we're about to get to really the heart and soul of it. Huh? That's exactly right. It carries. Don't you say anything about those onions. After this happened, I guarantee you, when they were all sitting out there on the porch, and someone said, "There's no real porch, y'all. I'm just this." Exactly right. Well, you stay right there. I'm going to go over here and talk to Joe Fred over here. All right. No, I'm pretty sure this had the desired effect for a little while. All right, so we get past that. We get past this moment. And this won't be the last time that God gets aggravated and upset with these people, because they complained a lot. That was one, when you get to 1 Corinthians 10, and you're trying to refer to what issue that Paul's talking about where the complaining was happening, he was displeased. It's hard for scholars to really look at it and say, well, this is the direct one he's talking about, because they complain so much about everything. All right, so let's keep going. So chapter 11, we get past the complaining and God's correction of that. And so in verses 4 through 35, as the march continued, the mixed multitude began complaining about the manna, which God gave them to eat. Their complaining spread throughout the camp. Rather than being thankful to God for miraculously providing manna from heaven for them to eat, the children of Israel looked back to the diet they enjoyed in Egypt, to the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. They forgot about the harsh treatment they received from their Egyptian taskmasters and began to pine for Egypt. When the people complained, Moses could not take any more. He also turned to complain to God, stating that he could not bear the burden of these people alone. In recognition of the legitimate grounds of Moses' complaint, God commanded him to select from among the people 70 men from the elders of Israel to be appointed as officers over them to help bear the burden of the people. To these 70 men, God promised to give His Spirit. The Lord told Moses to call the people together and command them to sanctify themselves. He had heard their complaint and promised to give them meat to eat, which would last 30 days, verses 18 through 20, until it became loathsome to them. Moses questioned how the Lord would provide this quantity of meat. God responded, "It's the Lord's hand. Is the Lord's hand waxed short? Nothing is too difficult for the omnipotent God." Moses selected the 70 men whom he had chosen to help bear the burden of the people. He congregated them at the tabernacle. The Spirit of the Lord came upon them, and they began to prophesy. 2 of the men had not gathered, Eldad and Medad. They began to prophesy in the camp. When Joshua came reporting this to Moses and asking him if he should forbid them, Moses responded, "Would God that all the Lord's people were prophets." To feed the complaining people, God sent a strong wind which blew quail round about the camp. about a day's journey on every side. In places the birds drifted to a depth of 2 cubits. The greedy people gathered meat all day, all night, and into the next day, as if God never would again send them food to eat. They spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. They cured the meat so that it would last longer. Before they had eaten very much of the meat, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. Many people died and were buried there. The place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, the graves of lust. Afterwards, the camp traveled to Hazeroth. Now, so, yes, sir. Let's see. I can tell you in a second. Yeah, mine says in verse 4, led by the rabble, the people offered up more complaints. The rabble were among them with greedy desires. Let's see. They were part of a mixed multitude who had left Egypt with Israel. So these were the people who, I guess, kept throwing pyro on the fire, were people who had come out with them. So you could say they were instigating, so to speak. Yes, yes. Yes, yep. And so they might have been stoking the fires here, right, of the complaints, but at the same time, if you're an Israelite and you've just seen what has happened when you complain and how God takes that complaint, how should you react to the ones who are gaslighting here? Y'all can have that opinion. We're going over there, right? Because you've seen what he does here, right? And so what are they complaining about? They're complaining about what they don't have. They're not looking at what they do have. He's providing for them. They're looking at what they don't have, right? Well, man, back in Egypt, we had this, 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 and this. And God says in return, okay, fine, what is it? They want meat? And the complaining gets to the point where Moses goes to God. And Moses says, listen, I can't deal with it, right? And some people would, sympathize with Moses. You're talking about everybody coming to you with their complaints. Everyone has something to say. Everyone has something that is wrong, right? That's a massive load for one person to carry. I don't care who you are. And so with it, he remedies this with the other men that are selected to help bear that burden. And God says, okay, you want meat? I'm going to give you meat. I'm going to send meat to you to the point that you can't stand it. Okay? Now, if y'all ate something over and over and over and over again to the point where you're like, I don't even want to look at that. Thanksgiving, right? We have that turkey left over, and then what do we have the next day? Turkey sandwiches. And then what do we have? Turkey this and turkey that and turkey that. And we just finally, you know what? I don't want to see another turkey till November next year, right? This is the idea of what God's going to do. He's going to teach them a lesson, right? He's going to teach them a lesson. And not only is he going to teach them a lesson, then he's going to punish. He's going to punish because of what? Their consistent complaining. They're consistent. I'm looking at what I don't have rather than what I do have. And a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about complaining and why it's an issue, y'all, when you're looking at the comparison here of what they had, God had given these people within manna. They didn't have to work for it. All they had to do was pick it up and eat it, right? That's all they had to do. So there's no flesh in the game, skin in the game, so to speak, right? There's no skin in the game on this. Literally get up and just go eat it. And it's good. I mean, it's got a sweetener to it. It's like a pastry. And so, I don't know. It's just, this speaks to the nature of people in that no matter. There's people today that no matter what happened, It does happen. That does happen for some. They dwell on the negative. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Let's keep moving. See, we got about 5 minutes, so let's keep going. So after this, chapter 12, we see an issue now, a rebellion, if you will, with Miriam and with Aaron, in verses 1 through 16. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman, so they said, "Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not also spoken through us also?" And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting." So the three came out, and then the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam. And they both went forward. And then he said, "Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" And so the anger of the Lord was aroused against them, and he departed. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. And then Aaron turned toward Miriam, and there she was, a leper. So Aaron said to Moses, "Oh, my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly and in which we have sinned. Please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of the mother's womb." So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "Please heal her, O God, I pray." And then the Lord said to Moses, "If her father had but spit in her face, would she not be shamed for 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterward she may be received again." So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. And afterward the people moved from Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. Now, what we have here, when you look at why did this happen? Now, what's the relationship of Miriam and Aaron to Moses? Brother and sister. Is that a pretty close relationship? Absolutely. Now, when you look at this, some people argue, well, what's the root cause? Are they really that troubled with the fact that he married an Ethiopian woman? Is that really what they're upset about? No, that's really not what they're upset about. Yes. Now, when you look in Scripture, the only wife that we have that's mentioned is Zipporah. That was the wife that was mentioned that he married when he was in Midian. Yes, but at some point he has married an Ethiopian woman as well. Same one. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. From what I've read, that this is different. This is a different woman. And so with that, are they really upset that he's married to this woman? No. It comes back to what you see in Genesis 4. What was the issue with Cain and Abel? Jealousy. They are jealous that who's got all the attention? Moses. Who's got the best relationship with God? Moses. They are upset because he's center stage and they are not. And what do? They play on that. And God calls them out. Matter of fact, if you look at verses 6 through 8, as God is